Memory is retrievable information stored in our brains. In this presentation, we present a simplified hypothesis on how the brain records information. Brain is not an empty slate at birth. We are born with information recorded in our brains. This information allows us to survive and to seek sustenance as we continue to acquire outside memories. So there is an ingrained memory which we are born with, and then we acquire memories through our lifetime. The ingrained memory influences the kind of acquired memory that we register. For acquired memories, you have an information inflow. Information flows in through the sensory inputs: vision, hearing, olfaction, touch, and taste. These pathways of information communication from a sensory portal to the cortex where it is received is by axons and synapses. Humans are visually dominant. The retina of the eyes receive images transferred back through the optic nerves. Exchange of information of the two optic nerves at the chiasm, and then the optic tracts, which continue on to the thalamus, to the lateral geniculate nucleus. At the level of the thalamus, there is no perception of vision. However, there is a thalamic screening, and hazard reflexes are identified and implemented. A missile flying at our heads might not be perceived by the cortex before we duck and throw up our hands to protect ourselves. Optic radiations now carry impulses from the lateral geniculate nucleus to the occipital cortex. Long trajectories through the cortex allow relevance and precedence stacks to be added to the information morsels. We say that eyes do not see what the mind does not know. It might be more appropriate to say that the occipital cortex does not register what we do not know. The purpose of the occipital cortex is to register images of relevance to us. Information registered in the occipital cortex moves on to the accessory cortex, to the visual accessory cortex, where images are identified. Once images or any information on any sensory cortex is identified, it passes along two streams. One is an action stream, which decides the response to the information, and the other is the archival stream, which moves through the hippocampus for registration. What and where about the information is added in the accessory cortices. Now the information for archival, that is for creating a memory, moves on to the hippocampus. In the hippocampus, there is multi-modality integration from the different sensory portals. Emotional correlates are added, and this memory sachet so created remains in temporary storage in the hippocampus. Information transfer from the hippocampus to the neocortex occurs in thalamocortical spindles. These are waves of information transfer which occur during NREM or shortwave sleep. information is transferred in two streams. The prefrontal cortex receives an abstract or a gist of the information which is coded in language. The reason why we need gist information is that it's easy to process and fast responses can be made. This information remains in the synaptic maze, and the prefrontal cortex, with its abstract information gist, is the secret of human cognitive superiority. Because it's in language, it is easy to manipulate, easy to make decisions. The other stream of information passes on to the parietal association cortices. So as we have said, the information passes on to the neocortex for archival. The prefrontal cortex receives gist information, which is coded in language form. Here it is preserved in the synaptic maze. This information is useful for decision making and for executive function. It is a secret of human cognitive superiority. Parietal cortex, parietal association cortex, receives detailed memory engrams. These are archived post-neuronal, that it passes from the synaptic maze and into neurons. Now, how is information preserved inside a neuron? By chemical bonds, by peptide linkages, not yet clear. But this is likely to be chemical or by peptide sequences because this information is resilient. Years after an accident, a patient might wake up from coma with intact information because the information has been intraneuronally coded. And once reconnections are established, memories may come flooding back. Memories are transferred from the hippocampus to the neocortex in the early phase of sleep, that is the SWS, short wave sleep, or non-rapid eye movement sleep. Memory bulk transfer occurs in thalamocortical spindles. The prefrontal cortex, as we have said, receives abstract information, and the parietal association cortices receive bulk information. Both information parts are tethered through the caudate nucleus, which acts as both an index and a tether. Intraneuronal information repositories exist in the parietal cortex. This brings in the concept of postsynaptic or beyond synapse. There is an information storage, and this is probably single neuron information storage capsules or modules. The concept of single neuron information storage has scientific backing. Halle-Berry neurons, grandma neurons, etc. have been identified, where information regarding one particular concept is coded in a neuron. Also, single neuron information storage is quite resilient, and if the neuron survives, the information will survive, rather than synaptic storage, which is more easily lost. Transfer of information from the synaptic maze to intraneuronal repositories occurs in REM sleep. This is when dreams occur because the information stored inside a neuron churns as new information moves in, and the patient might experience dreaming. Synaptic maze is involved in the information transfer and also in temporary information records. The synaptic maze also stores information in the prefrontal cortex. Now that we have seen the memory archival scheme, let's see what is the action scheme. when the information which is received from a sensory portal is screened the thalamus. A thalamic level protective response may be initiated if the information implies hazard. Afterwards, the information moves on to the cortex. Here, the information is registered, it is identified, and then it moves back through the caudate nucleus and to the prefrontal cortex where decisions are made. After a decision is made on a response, this decision is ratified from information repositories which reside in the parietal association cortices. An action plan is implemented, maybe as speech, maybe through writing, and maybe as a motor program which is stored in the accessory motor cortex and modified for each particular scenario. Any action plan which is implemented is continually modulated by feedback. For a brief overview of this presentation, firstly, memory is registered archived information. Information is not always acquired, but some is innate, inherited, and pre-recorded in our brains at birth. This kind of information includes survival skills and behavioral patterns. These behavioral patterns are not only species specific, but they may vary between tribes and groups, even in the same species. Inherited memory also includes prefabricated templates, which facilitate further acquisition of information. New information is sought and selected for the available templates, and information is recorded serially. Addition of information to a template prepares the template for further inputs. That is, acquisition of information is serial and sequential. New information is received through sensory portals, which keeps enriching available templates. Information enters through the sensory portals and moves on to the thalamus. At the thalamus, hazardous information, that is information of which is threatening to life, is acted upon by reflexes. The thalamus can initiate protective reflexes which are later modulated by cortical rationalization. From the thalamus, information moves to the sensory cortex. There is some prioritization which occurs. There is information which is relevant to us, gets priority for registration in the neocortex. After registration in the cortex, recognition of that sensory input occurs in accessory cortices. From the accessory cortex, information moves in two streams. One is an action stream. This action stream is routed through the caudate to the prefrontal or the executive cortex. The archival stream or the memory stream conveys information to the hippocampus. At the hippocampus, multimodality integration of information creates an information sachet which is preserved there till transfer. Information is transferred from the hippocampus to the neocortex during NREM or non-rapid eye movement sleep. One information stream passes on to the prefrontal cortex, where gist or abstract information is coded in language and preserved in the synaptic maze. This information is coded in language, and this is key to human cognitive superiority. The other stream proceeds to the parietal accessory cortex, where multimodality information is preserved inside neurons. Intraneuronal information transfer, that is from the synaptic maze to chemical bonds or peptide sequences inside neurons, occurs during REM sleep. This is when dreams occur.